Hey guys, so we're back with let's talk a little bit more about last week in WWE wrestling. I know last week's video was really long, covered a lot of stuff. This week will not be as long. So let's first start with Monday Night Raw, which featured the start of the tournament for the World Heavyweight Championship. To start with, I don't like the setup for this. We've already talked about that. Having half of the competitors from Raw, half from SmackDown makes zero sense to me. So, we start the show with the first of these matches. I don't care for the fact that we had pretty much the whole of the tournament for Raw in one night, right? Because we are already down to the final competitor. So I guess my hope is that for the next 2 weeks leading up to Night of Champions, that we get maybe on the respective shows some promos between the two competitors. We'll get into that more. So to start this week of Raw, they had Cody Rhodes come out to start things off. And I don't know that I like that. Right? It didn't make a whole lot of sense. Yes, he was in one of the matches for the tournament, but he was in the second one. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have him have that face-to-face with Seth, which it appears it was the purpose behind it. Yes, they had a feud. Have they done anything with that since? No. So it does not. You might as well have just had Seth come out to start the show. And left Cody completely out of the beginning of it. It wasn't necessary. So, the first match is the triple threat to determine the first person that was going to go into the semifinal match at the end of the night. We have Seth Rollins, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Damian Priest. This was a decent match. All of these are great competitors. They really are. They made everyone still look very tough, right? Priest still looked like a fierce competitor, even though Seth ended up taking the victory because of the injury from Puerto Rico in the street fight. It still allowed him to look like a strong competitor, and it didn't take anything away from him by having Rollins win. We then had so this was very interesting, and I don't know where this leads us for next week. But so Giovanni Vinci and Ludwig Kaiser were backstage, and they were telling everybody about how the ring general Gunther was going to be there next week. He was arriving. It will be his first appearance since being drafted to Monday Night Raw. So that's kind of cool, and it is a way to build him up. The interaction between Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Kaiser and Vinci was interesting, and it built to a match, right? So that could be fun. And it could lead somewhere to a tag team championship match, which it did lead to a match that night without titles on the line, but still kind of a fun little segment. So next, they're trying to, I think, maybe build up Mustafa Ali a little bit, while at the same time trying to do something between Chad Gable and Otis. I don't know if their end goal is potentially to break them up or not, with everything going on with Maxine Dupree trying to essentially kind of pull Otis away. But at any rate, Mustafa Ali picked up the win to Otis, or against Otis. It was a good match. It was okay. Not great. It got them on the show. That was kind of really all it did. I don't really know that it did anything super great for anyone, but it's moving Ali into a better position, I guess. We then had the second of the matches for the World Heavyweight Championship. Cody Rhodes, Finn Balor, and The Miz. Finn Balor ends up picking up the victory over The Miz when Cody Rhodes was pulled out of the ring toward the end by Brock Lesnar. This kind of continues to keep things going between them for Night of Champions. It was a way in order to get Cody out of that match, while still at least allowing him to be part of it, which, do not get me wrong, he probably deserved to be in that tournament, right? So, that helps them, right? This also sets up Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor at the end of the night for the semifinals. Keep in mind, guys, that this is also the match that we saw for the first Universal Championship. It happened to have been Seth Rollins and Finn Balor. And that one, Finn Balor picked up the victory to become the first Universal Champion. He eventually had to give that title up right away because of an injury, but that is what we got. So it's kind of a callback to that. The next match was essentially just kind of wanted to get some people on the card. We had Dana Brooke that wanted a match against Rhea Ripley. She had a nice little pre-done promo beforehand about her untapped potential. We got Dana on the card. She still is not necessarily my favorite. But I feel like she's maybe getting a little better, but not great. The main thing that this match did, though, was at the end, when Rhea Ripley put Dana Brooke back into this prison lock, the way that got released was Natalya coming out, who was recently just drafted to Raw. So that's a fun way to get Natalya on the card to make her look strong. And we could be looking at Rhea Ripley's first competitor, potentially. And Natalya versus Rhea could be a fun match for a championship. I think that will be fun. And that's probably where that's headed. They did a promo with the NXT stars that were drafted. That was kind of neat. Acknowledging them. They did a promo with Zoe Stark. She called out Nikki Cross, who happened to be back there, and set up a match between them that night. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when that match actually happens. Then we got the tag match between Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Imperium. And that was a fun little match. Got both teams on the card. It looked very good. Everyone looked very strong still. This is going to lead to some more things between Imperium and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. I don't know exactly how that works with Gunther coming. I don't know how they're going to work out that 5th person, but that's okay. It was still pretty decent, and we'll see where that storyline goes. I don't see it going toward either Kevin or Sami getting a shot at the Intercontinental Championship, but in some form it's going to have to do with some kind of tag match, some kind of tag team thing. So we then had Zoe Stark and Nikki Cross's match. What I liked about this, so it kept Zoe Stark strong, and she did end up picking up the victory, which I didn't necessarily like as much because I felt like they needed to keep Nikki looking strong too, which was, so I like the fact that they're tending to lead more toward Nikki and her old persona, kind of that crazy Nikki Cross, which I liked. And if you're going to go with that, I think she needs to be more of that heel character. And they're leaning more toward that version of Nikki. So it would have been nice for them to have given her that win. But I get being Zoe's first match, they wanted her to pick up a victory. And this does not necessarily hurt Nikki at all. We'll see where that ends up going from there. We then had the promo from Trish Stratus. She had the missing posters, or looking for Becky. She went into that Becky will be found, but it will not be on Monday Night Raw. She's not stealing her spotlight. Kind of going more into that feud there, building that up. They played Becky's music once as kind of a, not necessarily a joke, but trying to get people to think she was there. And when it went off the second time, that was when Becky was really there, so that confused Trish and allowed Becky to get that punch in. I liked it. I don't know that this sets up things for Night of Champions necessarily. I don't know that we need to do anything there. I think you need to continue to keep building that to SummerSlam. Make SummerSlam the match for these two. Or that kind of culminates. It gives you a little more time to kind of slowly build things to that. We'll have to see next week what they decide to do there. But I don't think they set this up for Night of Champions yet. I think that would rush it. Just my opinion. But I liked it. So I looked at things online after this, and so it did look kind of weird at the end of all of that, as though maybe Becky's mic had gotten cut off. And it maybe did, maybe didn't, but Becky played into it anyway. Having video that she did post, I believe it was on Instagram, maybe, with her going backstage to the sound guys to figure out which one of them had cut the mic off before her promo was done. It really kind of seems to me like the promo was pretty much done, but that's a little unclear. I think she maybe had more to say still. So that was kind of fun that she kind of continued that over on social media and kind of played into that. So then have Xavier Woods and Dominic Mysterio. This had been set up when Xavier Woods ran into Dominic and Rhea backstage. So Dominic got over on Xavier. I don't really like this for a couple of different reasons. First of all, and I get the purpose behind it, so they want to keep Dominic somewhat looking strong, right? And they did get more of that heel heat on him by having Rhea being part of what allowed him to pick up the victory. But I don't feel like Xavier Woods had to necessarily eat that loss. I don't know that was good for him. There is still so much talent in him and things that you could do with him to make him look strong and progress things, and I don't know that this does that. Since Ray is now on SmackDown, maybe this is just where they're going with this and moving him into this feud with Xavier Woods. I don't know. We'll see where that goes and how they end up playing that out. I don't think that they needed to go that route. Then we had the semifinals for the Heavyweight Championship. It was a good back and forth match, as you would expect from Rollins and Balor, right? So Seth Rollins picked up the victory there, which does not surprise me at all, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, I think most people expect that Seth Rollins is going to end up picking up the victory. It was a really good match. I just think they could have waited to do this. So let's move on to SmackDown. So lots of fun things happened on SmackDown. Let's start with the Bloodline. Okay, they're out in the middle of the ring. So Roman wants the Usos to apologize. I have a little issues with this segment to some extent. One of those being that you could tell that the Usos were conflicted about having to apologize. And I think they got things maybe a little backwards in having Jay being the one that stops Jimmy after Jimmy was pushed, to say that they apologized. It was really Jay that had been the one that had stepped away from the family and was kind of stepping up to Roman. So to have him being the one that backed down now, and Jimmy being the one that was ready to refuse to apologize, I think they maybe got that backwards, but we'll see where it goes, honestly. So, moving on. We had the Heavyweight Championship matches here on SmackDown 2. We had AJ Styles versus Edge and Rey Mysterio. AJ Styles picking up the victory. It was a decent match. It was. And I think AJ Styles was the right pick in this. Edge is not in a position, I think, for a championship run. I don't know that Rey is necessarily either. But they're both still tough competitors that are willing to put their bodies on the line. That being said, I think it still was a testament to AJ Styles that he was able to take on both of them. The other match for that was Bobby Lashley and Austin Theory and Sheamus. Bobby Lashley ended up picking up that victory. That's going to lead us to that semifinal match that we'll get to. We had a very quick match between Cameron Grimes and Baron Corbin. That having to do with the fact that Cameron Grimes was the last pick in the draft. Well, Baron Corbin was never picked at all. We'll see where that goes. It got them on the card. It was literally a couple second match. Cameron Grimes picking up the victory. I don't know if this does anything to hurt Corbin necessarily. I think it'll be a nice way for them to have more of a feud that doesn't necessarily have to do with a title. It can be more of kind of a blood feud sort of thing. We then end up having a women's tag team title match with Morgan and Raquel taking on Damage Control, Bayley, and Dakota Kai. So, with Morgan and Raquel end up picking up the victory and retaining their championship. It was a fun little match. Not necessarily overly special, but not bad. And then we'll see. We'll see where we go from there. We then had the Brawling Brutes were backstage. They're talking, and Pretty Deadly comes in, kind of introducing themselves, that kind of thing. I think this is going to be an interesting feud, a way to kind of introduce Pretty Deadly to the scene, and the Brawling Brutes is actually really a good first feud for them, with Sheamus in that group. He's a very seasoned competitor, so he is really going to be able to walk them through that and getting them over, introducing their characters, getting the crowd to care about those characters, and show them how to progress with that. So I think he will do a great job of being able to teach them those skills. We then had Bianca come out. This was in her hometown. So she's having kind of a celebration. Asuka comes out and she has mist in her mouth. So it ends up spitting some mist, which is kind of fun. I think that's going to be the first probably feud for the SmackDown Women's Championship, which is what it will be since Bianca is now on SmackDown. And that should be a decent feud. It really should. We'll see what they do with Asuka as a heel, as that is more what they're leaning towards with her. Although some of the crowd seems to be kind of turning on Bianca, we'll see where this goes. She's been a babyface for a long time now. It might be time to switch things up a little bit there. So they did end up making an official match for next week between Butch and Ridge Holland and Pretty Deadly. So that'll be a fun one to watch this coming week. We then had our championship match, our heavyweight semifinal match for the heavyweight championship. That was AJ Styles versus Bobby Lashley, with Styles picking up the victory there. So that leads us to what will be our finals match at Night of Champions. And that will be Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. We will get that match at Night of Champions. It should be a pretty decent match with those two. We will see where they go toward the lead up for this and whether they have any intermixing on the brands. I wouldn't mind seeing the face-to-face with them. I don't necessarily really want it because I want them to keep that brand specific. If you're going to go through the whole process, having a draft, then I think you need to keep them separate. We'll see where they end up going with that to try to build that up in the next 2 weeks. So that ends up being this week in WWE Wrestling. Don't forget to leave any comments, whether you agree, disagree, whichever. Let's have a conversation. Don't forget to drop a like, and we'll see you next time.